Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeannie Tuvell, and my friend Barbara Lagoni, who is a nutritionist and a wonderful RN by the name of Kay Beers, is going to be joining us on a topic that really, to me, has hit home lately, and it's on brain health. We'll review the factors that affect brain health and also a few Shaklee products that help support healthy bodies and healthy brains. And this is quite a topic today. Just recently, long-term health care was increased. And when I called my insurance broker and I said, look, it hasn't been increased in 15 years. Why did it increase by $1,500 a quarter? And he said, because there's been such an increase in Alzheimer's disease. And those are the people that end up getting it many times when they're very young, but they stay alive until they're in their 80s and 90s in these nursing homes. It really hit me all of a sudden. I didn't realize how many people and how many families are really being affected by this. So I think you'll find today extremely not only interesting, but hopefully it can help someone that you know either personally or someone that you know as a friend or a family friend. So Barbara, take it away.
All right. So hi, everyone. I want to begin with a quote I came across when I was, pulling together material to share with you today. And it struck me. I wanted to share it with you. It said, the brain is the most complex part of the human body. That this 3-pound organ is the seat of intelligence. It's the interpreter of the senses, our eyes, our hearing, our touch. It's the initiator of body movement, and it's the controller of behavior. Lying in its bony shell and washed by protective fluid, the brain is the source of all the qualities that define our humanity. It is the crown jewel of the human body. And so it's a good place to start because we need to take better care of it. And there's a lot of things that we can do. We're going to show you today that will help us do that. But let's begin with the first slide that tells us something about, I think it's back one more, Jeannie, it's about the incidence of mental health disorders because they're on the rise. Dementia, at least 6 million people in the U.S. have Alzheimer's or dementia. That's 1 in 10 adults over 65. But it's estimated to increase dramatically to 14 million by 2060. Minority populations seem to be affected even more so. But get this one, 1 in 3 seniors today dies of Alzheimer's or dementia, 1 in 3. And they kind of put dementia into 2 categories. One is vascular dementia that refers to blood vessels and circulation, which are essential, these small vessels in the brain to bring oxygen and nutrients to the brain. When they get damaged, then the nerve cells get damaged and separated and killed by the process, and memory cannot be restored then. And then there's Alzheimer's, which is plaques and tangles that develop in our brains and interrupt our ability for brain function. And so I'm going to pass this then to my companion, Kay, today, and she's going to tell you about another aspect of mental health.
Well, depression and anxiety. I mean, don't you know people who have gone through problems with this? I mean, even in our families, we see this. And it's reached an all-time high, of course, in 2023. And it's one of the most common mental disorders in the United States is depression. So much so that it's reached 50% adults between the ages of 18 and 24, and 1/3 of adults overall, but especially women. Look at that. 1/3 of women report depression at some time in their lives, and the highest rates are between 18 and 44. That says it all. Yes. And so now we're going to take a look at factors that damage the brain cells, because as they're damaged, they can't function as well, and we can get these disorders that Barb was talking about, dementia and Alzheimer's and cognitive decline and depression and anxiety. I think one of the biggest things is right on top, because that's chronic stress, and it just impairs your memory function. It can kill brain cells. And the one I think about when I think about stress is that it shrinks the prefrontal cortex. And that's the area that's responsible for memory and learning. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later when we talk about a product that we have called MindWorks. I love that product. Also, exposure to toxins. My goodness, we're exposed to them all over the place. And thank goodness that Shaklee has these wonderful biodegradable cleaners without toxins. We've been using these for 34 years and felt really good about it, especially with our little bitties that run around. But also exposures to air pollution outside. I learned that as small as, is it 2.5? Let me just check for sure. 2.5 micrometers or smaller. When you breathe them in from air pollution, they can get into your bloodstream. So it's not just what we put on our skin that can be absorbed that's toxic, not just what we do our clothes in, not with our cleaner, not just that, but the air pollution itself and getting into our bloodstream. And we know that when this happens, especially women who are pregnant or have little bitties, they can pass those toxins onto their babies. And that can cause some developmental problems with their brains and birth defects. I'm so sorry about that too. But also diabetes. Diabetes is inflammatory of your blood vessels and your nerves. So this not just affects your hands and your eyes and your circulation, but it affects your brain. You get an inflammation there, and it damages the nerves in your brain. So we have to be careful to control that high blood sugar. And then, of course, cardiovascular disease and strokes. We need that good circulation to transport the oxygen and nutrients in our brain. That's where they get all the good stuff that helps it to function better. And then alcohol. It damages the microbiome. You know, we've talked about that good bacteria in your digestive tract, and Shaklee certainly has some wonderful probiotics for that. But the fact that when you take alcohol, it damages that microbiome. My goodness, the gut-brain connection is important. And if we mess up our gut by messing up the microbiome through lots of things, but alcohol is one of them, then we start having problems with our brain too, and also causing some problems intestinal with a leaky gut. And then, of course, there's injury and trauma, accidents, athletic events that people can injure their brains and have bruising and bleeding and tear tissue. Okay, next.
I always worry about the soccer players bouncing those balls off their head. But yes. Okay, but let's talk about then on the plus side, what we can do to protect our brains, starting with physical exercise. Mm-hmm. Increasing, when we exercise, we're increasing blood flow to the brain. So it naturally counters that reduction that occurs over time that begins to separate the brain connections that comes with aging. Second, sleep. Amazing what you read about sleep. We'll give you a little more detail on that in a minute. But when we sleep, the body clears abnormal proteins in the brain and consolidates our memories, and all of that boosts our memory and our brain health. You know how you feel when you haven't had enough sleep. We're disoriented and we don't think as clearly, and where our brains just don't function well without that. It's a very important part of the body's repairing during the night. Then we come to diet, Mediterranean type diets, just lots of fruits and vegetables, all the polyphenols and the flavonoids and the nutrients that come to us in vegetables and in fruits and the plants that nature has grown for us. That's critical. When we eat processed foods, when we eat lots of baked goods and sweets and fried things and so on. It's very damaging to our brains. 4, staying mentally active. This is where all these, crossword puzzles, which can make me crazy, and Sudoku and reading and playing cards and putting puzzles together, all of that is really good for our brains. What is not good for our brains is passive television. That's like not so good. Second, last, 4, what is my number? Remain socially involved. When people get isolated, when I was reading this, I was thinking about people who live alone, who become widowed. We need to remember to reach out to them and bring them into the circle of community in our neighborhoods and our homes. It wards off digression and stress. And that all begins to diminish our memories. And then keeping our blood vessels healthy. Kay mentioned it earlier. Blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, insulin levels in our blood vessels, and that all contributes to the vascular dementia. But these were kind of cool. Music is like really good for the brain. I hadn't heard that. And then smoking is incredibly damaging for all the reasons Kay mentioned earlier about the toxins that it introduces. Same way with alcohol. But this one I hadn't known about until more recently. Hearing loss is it really diminishes our brain function, and it sneaks up on us. And I hadn't realized it until one of my friends got a hearing aid. It's like, really, I never knew anybody who had hearing aids, and I didn't know anything about them. And so we went and had our hearing checked, and it was not so good. And I grew up in the 60s generation with a lot of rock bands and the Beatles and all that. And after we got these hearing aids, and we got back in the car, and Hans turned on the directional signal to pull out, and it was so loud. We couldn't believe it. It was what happens when you can't hear. You start dropping out of conversation because you don't want to keep saying to people, what did you say? Would you repeat that? It isn't effective for our brains. We've got to stay engaged. Okay. Then there are some products. That's where we want to go now as a place to start to begin providing nutrients for our brain and our bodies. One of the best starting places is Shaklee makes, without question, the best multivitamin that there is. It not only has everything in it, it has it in it in a way that you can absorb it. It's what they're best known for. And so as the simplest thing you can do, you at least start with that. But my favorite is really the vitamin strip. It's a daily vitamin strip with 6 tablets on it called Vitalizer. It just gives you a great overview of a very comprehensive nutrition. That's a great starting place. Full of antioxidants and that help protect the brain cells and fight the free radicals. And then what we want to do now, though, is go through some of the additional products that are more specific for brain health. And Kay mentioned it a moment ago, and that is MindWorks. We have at the top of our list. The mental acuity complex, that's ginkgo biloba. Omega Guard, which that is a must-have nutrient, not only for the brain, but a whole for the whole body. Heart circulation, and then the probiotics because of the brain-gut connection that Kay mentioned earlier. So, Kay, over to you, and you can get us started.
Oh, thank you. So I get to talk about MindWorks. And when Shaklee introduced this to us, they're so wonderful about teaching us about the product that they put together and have researched and did studies on, that we know a lot about it, and we're so appreciative because then we're able to teach other people, especially all those analyticals that want to know all the details, like me. And so the key ingredients in MindWorks, 2 of them are, one of them is the Chardonnay grapeseed extract. What this really does, besides all those things on there, is really improve your circulation to the brain, taking the oxygen and the nutrients to the brain so it can work the best. And then guarana, I've been practicing saying that. It's kind of hard to me. Guarana. Guarana is so neat because as we age, well, yes, as we age, our brain can shrink. That prefrontal cortex can shrink. It can shrink by as much as 30% as we age. Well, we don't want that to happen. What happens when it shrinks is that the connectivity of the neurons can't really connect very well anymore, and that leads to memory loss. And so guarana increases short-term memory and helps that brain to stay not so small so it can do all the things it wants to do. So guarana is an extract that it helps to sharpen our focus 3 times more than the control group in the study. It also improves reaction time. Boy, isn't that nice? I mean, we're driving in the car. I know some older people who have been driving in cars are a little bit slow in the reaction time. So it's not like they're not good drivers, but gosh, other people can be faster and then they won't react as fast. Anyway, it's important. And it protects against age-related mental decline. It slows the brain shrinkage rate by 30% and supports our circulation. There's a little bit of caffeine in the guarana, and it's been used in some exercise products. But what we use in this one only has a little bit, and it's less than a cup, what's in the cup of decaf coffee. That's great. So I really love this product, and I think it does wonders for us.
That brings us to the products that support our circulation. And at the top of the list is Omega Guard. I referred to it earlier. I take a lot of Omega Guard. I like it because it's vital. It's a nutrient that's vital for brain cells to function correctly. And living in the United States, you may have noticed, we don't know a lot of people who snack on sardines. It's not a nutrient that is central to our eating habits in the United States. And this is why it's so important to take it in supplemental form. Even salmon, which is great to eat and to eat fish, but because of the pollution levels in our oceans, I worry about the heavy metals from that, and the mercury and the cadmium and so on. And so what I love about this one is Shaklee is really obsessive about purity and potency. And they have something they call triple molecular distillation, but it means it's a process that literally purifies the fish oil at the same time that provides very high levels of absorption. But look at this. Omega fatty acids have shown to decrease the risk of coronary artery disease, increase mental focus, and slow cognitive decline. There's a ton of studies about it. It's also really beneficial it is to brain development. They've found that women, when they're pregnant, when they take omega-3 fatty acids, their babies are born with higher levels of intelligence. I mean, all the news is good about it. And then the Shaklee blood pressure product, it's called blood pressure, which I just think is the weirdest name in the world, but it should be called arterial health because it provides vegetable powders that are very high in nutrients that naturally relax the walls of the blood vessels. With all natural ingredients. Side effects of blood pressure medications make me a little jumpy, but blood pressure, if it isn't managed well, it can lead to damage to the eyes, the kidneys, but especially the brain. And it has so it's important for us to understand what to do to keep that down. So I take that blood pressure product every day because I just think having the nutrient, those vegetable powders with the nitric oxide in it, that's what the body then converts to make it a natural way to relax the blood vessel walls. Coenzyme Q10, that's another one. And even the cholesterol reduction complex product, which is made of stanols and sterols that are very similar to cholesterol in their composition. And when you take that with a meal, it helps coat the lining of the intestines so that you are not absorbing cholesterol, and it's really pretty effective. So when we improve our circulation, we improve brain health. And that brings us to sleep. Look at this. Sleep deficiency is linked to heart disease, kidney disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, stroke, obesity, and depression. Sleep deficiency is also linked to a higher chance of injury because when you don't get enough sleep, you're not paying attention, you're more likely to have accidents for adults, for teens, and for children. So there are a number of products that are very beneficial for sleep. And I've noticed, and I experimented on my husband with this one because I kind of sleep like a ton of bricks. I take 2 of those Osteo Matrix before bed, and I have for the last, ever since I've been in Shaklee, I think 40 years. And I sleep very soundly. But not everybody does. And so people seem to have their own favorites when it comes to this. The Dream Serene product is a melatonin product, but it also has valerian, lemon balm, L-theanine. These are all things that relax the body and the mind. The newest one is the Rest and Rewind. It's a drink. It's a warm mint tea that you can take before bed and just helps the body wind down. It has this 5-HTP. It's kind of a tryptophan product. And people are telling us that they sometimes prefer to drink things or chew things and not always be swallowing tablets. But probably the one that is the most popular of all has been the Stress Relief Complex. And that's coming up in just a minute, and Kay's going to tell you more details about that. That ashwagandha is wonderful for that.
Okay, so depression and anxiety seems to be my topic today, doesn't it? It's been scattered out through this presentation. And on this one, it shows that probiotics are important. We've already talked about that, and so has Barb. B-complex is one of my favorite vitamins and has been ever since the 90s when Barbara introduced it to me. It's really good for the immune system, but gosh, it's really good for focus and for remembering and brain health and making you feel good. A couple of things. One of our daughters would come home in the afternoon, maybe have something to eat and start her homework, but she would get the first ones. My husband loves to tell the story, so he's on here. I thought I would tell the story. So she would get the first couple of her math problems correct, and then she would not get them correct. And at the end, she would get it correct again. And so we talked to Barbara, and she said, well, how about if you give her some B-complex, maybe 15 minutes before she starts her homework. And so we did that, and she did great doing her homework. Gosh, isn't that great? She could focus. I love it. But it also helps you to not be over anxious about things and get out of sorts when something happens. I was going to tell you another story, but since Richard's on, I'm not going to tell you that one. But vitamin D is so good because we've learned a lot about it recently. In the last 10 years, we know that many of us are really deficient in vitamin D and have been for some time. And so taking vitamin D, and Shaklee's is wonderful. It's inexpensive. It's got 2,000 milligrams. It's really good. But people who've started taking vitamin D and gotten their levels up because they have a blood test that checks for that, got into the sufficient range and then into optimal range too. It's great for our brain. And a whole bunch of things. It preserves your memory of the nerve cells, growth of nerve cells to preserve memory and executive function and mood. Sorry, I had to read that. But I do like vitamin D a lot. I have a friend who started taking it, and she was really, really, really depressed. And she was a young woman. And when I asked her how many she was taking later on, because she bought a lot of it, she was taking a lot of it. I mean, more than I would say. But she said, Kay, if I don't take that every day, I can't function. That's how important it was. And then there's a Cheer Up and Chill Out. This is a product that was introduced last August at the conference. I couldn't get enough of it. I kept going back for samples because it's a chewable and it's delicious. But it has my favorite ingredient, two of them in there, which is the ashwagandha and the L-theanine. And that's also in stress relief. I love stress relief. So I'll talk to you about that in a second. But Cheer Up and Chill Out is wonderful to help with your stress and help with sleep and help with your mood. Has a few B vitamins in it. And Barbara talked about Omega Guard already. Stress Relief Complex. Look at all the things that it does. And it has ashwagandha and L-theanine. And ashwagandha has been used for centuries by people. So it really, really helps with, let me just turn it over here so I can be sure. It's been used for thousands of years to help the brain and the nervous system. It helps to relieve stress. Now, this product is very subtle. And I always tell people when they start to use it, it's subtle. It's not going to all of a sudden knock you off like a medication would be. It's not going to dumb down your brain because it's depressing your nervous system. It actually wakes up your brain with L-theanine because that makes the alpha waves more working better. So you'll not only feel the subtleness of being more relaxed, but the ashwagandha blunts the cortisol that's produced whenever you're under stress. And it's the cortisol that's like fire running through your blood vessels and fire running through your digestive system. It does a lot of damage. So when you're under stress, it would be great to blunt that cortisol production. And your body's going to thank you for it. One of the things on here that I didn't even know about that Barbara pointed out is that it lowers blood sugar. I didn't know that. Lowers blood pressure. I can imagine, because if you're not stressed as much, it can lower the blood pressure. But it also is good for building muscle and increasing strength. Is that amazing? Supports the cardiovascular system, your immune health, etc. It's really good. I love it. Then going down to Mood Lift. I don't hear a lot of people taking Mood Lift, but whenever I do, and they love it because it's St. John's wort. And it's, let me turn to this so I have all my notes. So, and it's also got some Siberian ginseng with it, but it's been in studies compared to things like Prozac and Celexa and Paxil and Zoloft for mild to moderate depression. And it's been found to work just as well as the drugs. I like the fact that it contains inositol. And I believe, Barbara, isn't inositol the thing that covers our nerves?
That's what's in, choline and inositol. Coats the myelin sheath. Mm-hmm.
And so that helps for transmission of the nerve impulses. That's really good. However, it takes a while for this to take effect, like 4 to 6 weeks. So give it time. I think we've talked about all the way through this presentation of the Shaklee difference, and that's what this slide is about. Two things on here that I really, really like is Beyond Organic. When I began to think about it and other people were saying, well, I'm taking an organic vitamin, I think about Shaklee's as Beyond Organic, because organic growing of plants is how you say you're organic. But everything that happens whenever it's harvested, all the way through to when you start to make a multivitamin, say, can contaminate that. Shaklee makes sure that all the way through is not contaminated. They check for 350 contaminants, including heavy metals. The next 3 companies that check get this badge of approval by the USP saying that they've checked theirs for contaminants. But you know how many contaminants they have checked for to get that badge? Between 80 and 120. So I'm thrilled that Shaklee makes sure we don't get anything that's contaminated. And then the landmark study that you can read online, you can read it on the catalog, talking about the health of Shaklee users versus other people in the population. It's just incredibly better. Okay, Barb.
Terrific. Okay. So where do you start? We've talked about a lot of products today. There may be some of great interest to you. As a starting place, we would certainly recommend, in the simplest place, the Vitalizer strip, the daily vitamin strip that you take, and maybe the stress relief complex with that. But one of the best starting places that is underwritten by the company. So you can only order it once at the reduced price, but it's $179, and it's really complete. It has the vitalizer in it and the protein shakes that Kelly was talking about, and then it has a choice of additional free products. So ask the person who invited you to the call today, and they can tell you more about what might be the best place to start for you. Jeannie?
Well, first of all, thank you for joining us today. And we want to welcome you to kind of consider that nutrition is not the answer for every situation that we're in life. But our mission, Barbara and Kay and mine, and the people that are on today, is to create healthier lives. And we consider ourselves part of Generation Health. And I think more and more people are understanding that, when you have your health, you have everything. But yet we have to take care of our health. And this is where we are looking and giving you information that perhaps will help not only you, but perhaps someone. I hope that the information that Kay and Barbara shared, that you'll impart that. You'll share that with someone else, because that's really our mission. Our mission is not to keep this to ourselves, but to make an impact on someone that we know perhaps could benefit from the education that we gave all of you today. So these are just some quotes. I'd like to quietly allow you to read them.
So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next month for our next one.